Those of you that don't know, it's very unfortunate that I'm not able to be there with each and every one of you tonight, and there's no other place in the entire world I would really like to be more. However, there's some circumstances going on behind the scenes that make it not only a wise thing for me to be there in person, but just circumstantially, it's not going to be feasible right now. And so, first of all, to each of you that was hoping to be able to meet me in person, I know there's a lot of people there that have been a tremendous allies with us in this last season, in the last year, a few years since Take on the World. And I really wish I could have been there to hug each and every one of you and talk with you and get to hear your stories and hear what's been going on in your lives and try to answer your questions. And I'm going to do my best to still be available to each of you as we premiere these live on our chat. So you can do YouTube chats and different ways of staying connected so that each of you that does have those questions and wanted to have maybe an opportunity to do that can still be able to try to do that. So to each of you that were looking for that, I look forward to being able to connect with you in other ways. I will be speaking at different conferences throughout this year, and I would like an opportunity to still get a chance to meet you. First of all, to Chris and Liz, and to each and every one of you who spent the time, took the time, money, effort, sleepless, unbelievably restless, painful nights sometimes, and for the war that you wage behind the scenes in order to just make a conference like this come together. People have very little understanding of the reality of how difficult it is to bring all of these different speakers and people together in order to make this happen. And so I hope each and every one of you will just take a minute to really thank and appreciate those that have made this a possibility. So if everybody could just take a second and give a round of applause to each of those that are there that have volunteered to pour in themselves into this ministry, please do so now. It's kind of a big introduction, but I really wanted to make sure that people understood how critically important it is that we give recognition and appreciation to people when they do things that are a genuine blessing in our life. So many of us have been going about our lives with this mentality that there is a war being waged, but it doesn't really affect us. But it's not really over our souls anymore, that it's not something that is bothering us on a regular basis. And so instead we're able to push it out into the corners. We're able to tuck it away out of the corners of our lives where we don't want to look at it anymore. But the reality is that war that you're waging, that is being waged every day against you, against your family, is strategic. It's intentional, and it's precisely targeted to destroy you and the people you care about most, and to make sure that death at the end of its cycle will consume each and every life that is existing in this world today. I'm a man who grew up believing and knowing death as an intimate friend, as an ally in my quest for revenge, in my quest for meaning and purpose and justification and vindication. I did not have the opportunity to walk in a normal world like most people did. I was raised in between these two brutal worlds where on one end there was radical, devoted faith to the living God. There was a commitment to an idea of who he was, to try to have a relationship with him, to believe the word that he had written was true. And at the same time, I was sandwiched between an ideology that showed me real power. Real power was available through a totally different means. Real power could be accessed, could be hacked. Instead of having to go through the character development of what the Most High had for me, I wanted instant power. I wanted instant capabilities to do extraordinary things so that my burning pain that had ensnared me for all these years would finally be cast off, and I could feel this quenching to this fire that had been placed in me as a child. And there's a lot of people that are sitting in this room that have strange fires burning in your chests. They are fires of bitterness and envy and hatred and rage against the way that you were treated, rage against the way that people around you were treated. You've grown bitter, you've grown hardened to what you know to be the truth. It has seared you in certain areas. It's not everywhere. Life is still allowed to kind of flourish, but amidst this garden of rocks, there is death hiding and waiting. It is an ambush predator. There is a serpent hiding in the grass, and it makes its bed amongst us. It seeks to devour and consume the things in this world that are lovely, that are pure, that are holy, that are innocent, that are true. We're supposed to think on those things. We're supposed to meditate and hold on to an idea of his truth, of his lovely character, but also his just character. And there is a power behind the kingdom of darkness that has been consuming us for generations. And I am here today to expose that, to lay in very clear and explicit orders who it is that we fight. Because we're fighting amongst ourselves rather than fighting the dragon who seeks to consume each and every one of you. And that is how the enemy wins. The enemy is winning and prospering in the body of Messiah today. Each and every one of you that is sitting in this room, some of you right now know exactly the people in your mind that's starting to pop through your head. These people that are seemingly sowing dissension among the brethren. People that are agent provocateurs. These people that divide the body, that go after and do hit pieces of character assassination and seek to destroy ministries all over the place. This is intentional. This is strategic. People, whether they willingly understand it and are complicit in it, are under the influence of agents that are causing them to destroy each other. Why is this happening? Why is this happening now? Why is it that in the last year we have seen such a destruction and a division work its way into the body of Messiah so as to cause this festering anger and bitterness and strife to continually pour out of this region of the ministry that is going on around us? Why is that? Why is the enemy prospering within our midst? Why is it that there are people sitting in this room right now, there are people that are listening to this tonight that came here with ill intentions? They are the enemy. And they know how to wear a Christian mask. They know how to wear a Hebraic roots mask. They know how to wear a dispensational mask. They know how to be a chameleon and blend into any environment, whether it's godly or evil. And I was raised by a pack of people that believed in that ideology and were willing to be two-faced on a continual basis because that was as natural as breathing. There are children of the enemy that make their bed next to you and you do not even know it. They are undetectable because our eyes have been veiled with ignorance. We have hidden our faces in these sands of ignorance, begging the world to tell us that this stuff is not true. This is some conspiracy theory that can be thrown away and not to be looked at because people that believe this stuff are crazy. Don't even talk about what they want to talk to you about. Simply go back to the matrix that you have plugged yourself into and go back to the quiet, listless sleep, the comfortable creature that you call normal day-to-day living. I'm just as guilty of it as anybody else that is out there in the room right now that's listening to this. You have an opportunity to make a decision to look at and to stare in the face the darkest things in this world and cast the light of redemption upon them. We don't talk about dark, evil things because it's fun. We don't talk about these kinds of things because this is something anybody wants to do. Nobody should be standing on the stage or desiring to have a platform in ministry so they can grow in their pride and their arrogance and build themselves a platform unto themselves. And there's a lot of people that are seeking to do that. And we must crucify that idea in our hearts. We must kill the pride that is fetid and festering within us. Because if we're not willing to face the fact that there's a dragon that is laying a nest inside our own souls that seeks to give birth to doctrines of demons through our own voices, then we better be cautious and careful that we would not stumble into the snare of their making. But I'm here to tell you that the enemy does not understand the power of deliverance. The enemy does not understand that the Most High God sets snares for the wicked men to fall into. He does that because he loves them. And we must also love our enemies more than we fear them. See, I grew up between those two worlds, and so what it shaped in me was this ideology, this personhood that was so engrossed and dedicated to believing good, righteous love, that love would conquer all of these things in the end, that if I had true, radiant, consistent belief that at the end of it all it would matter, I could keep on living, that what I'd been a part of and what was happening to me was going to be worth it someday. And then I had another side of me that absolutely categorically believed that there was nothing good in this world and that it was dog eat dog and that you better learn to see where are the snakes in the grass. because there's ulterior motives, and there's people that are looking at you with a hunger in their heart, and they're seeking to consume you, to consume your gifts, your talents, your abilities, your hope, your joy, your passion, your zealousness in the convictions of what you have come to know and believe is truth. People want to feed on that. That's what shaped me. I was raised by predators. I was raised by people that exploit their own children to grow a kingdom unto themselves. People that blackmail and they cheat and they steal and they lie and they do whatever it takes to make sure that they get theirs, that they build their kingdom first. And so I climbed into that pyramid. I climbed into that altar and I bowed to an unclean, unholy, but very real fallen one. I made an agreement with the dragon. And I'm not speaking in hypotheticals. There are literal dragons that masquerade among men. These are the gods of old. These are the sons of Elohim, those rebellious watchers, those fallen seraphim, these fallen wicked ones that chose to make a covenant. They swore an unholy oath. They bound themselves by mutual imprecation at Mount Hermon, that place of the oath. And they said, we shall rebel. We shall transform ourselves. We shall mix ourselves out of the image of what we were made to be, out of these beautiful, radiant sons of perfect redemption, immortal and holy. And we will corrupt ourselves. We will twist ourselves. We will augment ourselves into a better image that suits our needs and our desires. We will be a chameleon so that we might then destroy the Most High God and his kingdom, to wage a war, a very strategic and calculated war against the children of the Most High God. And that seed war started thousands of years ago. And with that came families that descended from those bloodlines of corruption. Some of those families chose to listen to a specific watcher angel, and that angel gave them downloads for secrets that were reserved for the heavenly realms. These secrets, later God would say to them, laugh at them for saying, the secrets you think you know and the secrets that you perceive to release are nothing compared to the mysteries, the true secrets of the Most High God. So in the quest for knowledge, in the quest for good, and quest for evil, the bitter, the sweet, to learn how to destroy children in the womb, how to make up swords and armor and grab metals out of the earth and wage wars at a much more strategic and effective level, to come up with inspirations for building that aligned to these old structural sites, these ley lines, these electromagnetic fields that tie the earth together, to build up for themselves idols, to raise up for themselves a name, to be men of renown, to be heroes of old. They would be the titans. They would conquer the earth. These gods reigned and walked among men. And there's people that genuinely still believe that happens today, and I am one of them. Because though those gods reigned as mortals, as men, and with their machinations to destroy us, the Most High God thwarted their plans. He laid a judgment on them that was irrevocable. They have no right to repentance. They shall never be redeemed. And because of that, they rage against the Most High. And they were bound with chains of darkness, and they were cast into Tartarus, in the deepest bowels of the earth, in a prison cell that they sought to still reign from. See, the dragon, the devil, he really is a pimp who runs the show from prison. I absolutely believe we are not taking the enemy's best shot. And we are ignorant if we think that what is happening today is truly the war that has been prophesied to come. The days we are living in are evil, but they are not at the fullest of evil. There are still so many people that are trying to stand in the gap. There's these other people that are set apart from that lifestyle, that is willing to make covenants, to bind themselves, to bind their children, to sacrifice their children, their joy, their hopes, their dreams. I'm not talking about making your children go sit in a brazen bowl while they burn them alive. I'm talking about that you go and send them into schools of indoctrination to be raised by people that believe the devil is the hero in the story. This Gnostic ideology, this allegorization of Scripture that strips it of its power and binds it instead to weakness and impotency. We're raising our children by people. We're allowing other people to raise our children. And that is the most evil thing we could be doing, because they're supposed to be our first fruits. We are supposed to raise those children up on a set-apart path. We're supposed to walk on a holy and set-apart way that is narrow, that is not headed towards destruction, because broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are on the road, and they shall find it. And many of you sitting in this room, you have come to a place of believing that you yourself are absolved of this destruction that is coming. And the reality is the destruction waits for you, and it waits for me. And I chased destruction, and I made an unholy covenant with a dragon of old, so that I myself might be someone that could bring destruction to the men and women who tormented me for years of my life, the wicked perpetrators of exploitation who feasted on the lives of children, who raised them up to want to do evil things. So many of you are not guilty for the things people manipulated you to do. So many of you are carrying survivor's guilt that needs to be laid down and put to rest. I've carried guilt for years and now decades of my life, thinking I'm the reason that some of these people around me died, thinking that I'm the reason that so many of these people, their lives are blowing up, and I'm just this catalyst that causes everything around me to explode. But the reality is that you can call on the one who gives peace to the storms. There is a God who delivers people who run around cutting themselves because the numbness in their body, the world around them doesn't match the pain within them. And so they slice themselves to ribbons, hoping that somehow one of these wounds will bear resemblance to the pain inside, the numbness inside, the agonizing indifference to the way of this world. And that's because we ourselves have been ensnared by death. Death was conceived in the garden of life. It should have never been born there, but it was. The woman was beguiled by a serpent, and that serpent came to her. This fiery seraphim came and masqueraded before her and gave her an illusion to a life that would be better than what she currently had. He subtly deceived her. And that woman, when she turned to her husband, he too, passively, apathetically, allowed the serpent to devour his family. And we are the men who have allowed the serpents to devour our family. And it is time that we no longer bear the curse of Adam, but we repent of that. We turn away from that. We offer ourselves a staunch place that says, here I can stand. I will not move off of my convictions. I will not allow myself to be a coward anymore. I will not face the fact that I am a failure. Instead, I will face the fact that I am redeemed. I am delivered. I am made unto new righteousness. I am set apart to do good works. You yourself are made for a different purpose than what this world has made you believe you were made for. I don't care what your moment of conception looked like, whether you were conceived as a Babylon working ritual, that you are a moon child of Isis, or what you may think you are. You were not made for what this world has shaped you into be. You were made to be someone that was set apart. You were made to be a rare, unique, committed individual to truth. That you would believe and stand on the belief that the Word of God is true, that you can absolutely trust Him, that you can place every bit of your life in His hands, every bit of it, and He will not fail you. He will not fail you. He will not forsake you, but He will deliver you out of death. And when you've been delivered out of death, you are to take that story, you are to take that testimony, and you are to wage war against the one who once held your soul. And that is what I do, and that is why I'm here. And there are people in this room who sought to destroy me, who sought to kill me, who sought to kill other people that are standing on the front line, that are speaking in this room tonight, that are going to speak in the future, and they cannot be quenched because the Most High God has placed a hand of protection upon them that is irrevocable. And I am asking you to come to learn what it is that you are here for. You are here to wage a strategic war against that dragon. You are to fight, not with the weapons of this world, but with weapons that are not carnal, Because the carnal weapons come from the dragon himself. And when you get in the flesh, and when you start to fight out of the rage, when you start to fight out of the anger, out of the bitterness, out of that furious hatred that has been birthed inside you because of injustices, because of lies that someone came along when you were 7 years old and they spoke about you in a moment of weakness. These people, these serpents that were hiding in the grass of our life, that the enemy had placed there, these mouthpieces of ignorance, who did not even know the words they spoke and the meaning that they had behind them, but the enemy did, and he targeted you at a strategic moment in your life to wound a character trait in you, to strip you of the hope that you had, that conviction that you had, that life is inherently going to matter more than the misery that I feel right now. That even if you're stuck in the circumstances, even if you're still trapped in the trade, where you're bound to these addictions that you can't escape, where you're lost in the lust that won't define you anymore, you're looking for hope. And hope has a name. His name is salvation. And he came for us. He came to show us how we defeat the dragon of old. He walked upon this earth. He took on the flesh that we so desperately can't destroy. He put on the decaying skin suit that would tempt him in every way that we have been tempted. And then he subjected himself not to the way of this world, but to the way of his Father's will. He came to study himself. He came to look at the man in the mirror, and he looked at the word of who had said his Father was, and he conformed himself. He did not shapeshift himself to be like his Father. He slowly allowed the Father to transfigure him, to imprint upon him a new way of being, to cultivate in him, to burn away from him the areas of his life that were causing him disease. He let him live a life of abundance, and he let him live a life of lack, and he let him live a life of punishment and of suffering and of betrayal. And the very people that loved him most turned on him in his greatest hour of need. And I know some of you that are sitting here right now know exactly the feeling of betrayal. I know you know what it feels like to tell the people you love about the God who saved you, and for them to categorically call you crazy. I know you know what that feels like. That is why I love you and I respect you. I care about you. But the Most High God is most caring when he is seeing in us the character traits that reflect his Son's image in him. He came only to do the Father's will. He came to destroy the strongholds of the devil. He commanded us to be not ignorant of the devil's schemes. So why are we ignorant? Because we're cowards. We're cowards. Because we allow the people in our lives to shape us rather than his word to define us. We have let this world wash over us with this false iniquity, with these curses, and with this mind control, and with this magical working, and with sorcery. We live in a world that was designed to destroy us, to parasitically feed on our souls, on the life that we had, and allow them to grow rich and strong and powerful by our condemnation, by our destruction, by the accuser's lies in our head that sing over and over and over again. You'll never be good enough. If people really found out what you're doing, they would never have anything to do with you. That you're a failure. That once again, you screwed up. See, people are just setting yourself up for failure. These lies that just roll through our head. Not every thought you think is your own. And many of those thoughts did not come from the one who made you, but they came from the one who wants to devour you. And it is time that you rebuke those words and you stand with faith in who he says you are, and he will accomplish everything he promised he would do on this earth. His word is trustworthy, it is unshakable, and it is unmovable. And I'm calling each and every one of you to remember to stop fighting each other. If you are guilty for it, if you're one of the people that are a dissenter, if you're one of the people that gets on those keyboards and uses that to assassinate people that love the word of God, that love him, regardless if you think they are the ones who have been lost in the snares of deception, you go to them privately if you ever do so, or you yourself are a son of the dragon walking in disobedience and not following the Son of the living God, because he does not say that is his fruit. That comes from the enemy's camp, and you yourself have been ensnared in the doctrines of destruction, and it is time you flee the wrath that is to come. Don't you yourself be guilty of the destruction of the body of Messiah, because the Father will deal with each and every one of us for every idle word we have ever spoken. We are supposed to be pilgrims that are progressing our way out of the world, not into it. When it's in our heart, it's infected our souls. We must seek to destroy those strongholds that are being laid up inside us. We must wage war within the spiritual iniquity that has been planted within us and seek the cleansing and the deliverance that comes from walking in obedience to him and following after his mercy, receiving the goodness of his power that comes through his grace to wage war on the giants within as much as the giants without. The giants without there, they take on very different names than they once did. They don't look like they once masqueraded as giants with 6 fingers and 6 toes, devouring cannibals that walked among us, who sacrificed children on the street corners and breathed in the fires of incest to fuel their kingdoms. They've been burned beneath the ground. And instead they set up labyrinths of tunnels, trafficking systems, and networks of encrypted communications. And they use systems built to entertain us to instead infect us with their disgusting destruction of morality. They are strategically plotting ways to infect us with an ideology that will make us into the image of the beast, of Apollo, the great king of the pit, who these people at the end of the day worship with every bit of conviction that you and I worship our God with. And I myself was ensnared to him and pledged myself to him when I was a child in a town in Arizona. A year ago today, I stood on this stage, and for the first time in my life, I publicly shared my testimony after publishing my book, Snatched from the Flames. And in that book, I placed a map that is hidden within it, that once all of the clues were found, would help to show people and expose the very individuals who are allowing these kinds of activity to happen, the very spiritual entities, the carnal as well as the not so carnal individuals who walk among us, who are serpents hiding in plain sight. And just this summer, somebody finally found one of those clues, and they sent that my way. And because of that, I published a blog post on snatchedfromtheflames.com in which I expose Lake Havasu City, Arizona, and the city of London building their own fantasy island, where mind control experiments in Walt Disney and their veritable world of mind control could take place freely under the ruse of a retirement community, where old men could be seen with little boys and nobody would think anything of it. So in the early 1960s, a billionaire stepped in, and wouldn't you know it, had a plot to make their own fantasy island. Now, I'm not talking about Jeffrey Epstein here. I'm not talking about the Little St. James Island, but I'm talking about the real fantasy island that is in the Arizona desert of the United States. And it is over in that desert along the Colorado River where a bunch of individuals gathered together and conspired on how to create a place where anything goes, where men and women could be flown in, landed on private runways on Indian reservations, shipped over on a private boat, and then placed on an island that was owned by the city of London from Great Britain. I'm not joking about any of this, but the city of London itself has a territorial boundary marker that sits in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. And the dragons that mark those boundaries are the very dragons that we wage our war against. And I want each and every one of you to take some serious time as I walk you through what a community of dragon worshiping people can produce. I grew up in that community in Arizona. My family members did like their family members before them. And they made deals with devils to grow their kingdoms. I'm not talking about some kind of hypothetical thing. What I'm talking about is geodetic magic, where people will come together and follow a recipe to do a ritual where they're summoning a specific spiritual entity, more than likely a fallen demonic spirit that was rebellious and set itself up to be an agent of evil to all the sons of God on this earth as long as they could. These beings that were not necessarily destined to be immortal have instead been bound onto this prison planet for them, and they seek to ensnare each and every one of us into their kingdom that they might parasitically feed off of us. They are absolutely committed to the destruction of all of the good and righteous things in this world, and they are willing to lie to the individuals who summon them, to promise them things that they cannot fulfill, to lie and cheat and steal from them the blessings and the inheritance that they were promised from the foundations of the world. And so people like my family members before me said, I want the trust fund. I want the ability to have access to these halls of power and to be able to sit and have the audience with the king. And so what they did is they sold their children's right. They swore oaths against their own children, and they bound themselves and hoodwinked themselves and swore an oath that they would protect and guard the covenant of their brothers rather than the covenant of the Most High God. And they categorically renounced and rejected the Holy Spirit of the Most High God and betrayed the King of Glory for now and forever. They swore oaths of destruction. They bound themselves to the very same watchers that men once bound themselves before, and they took on and swallowed a seed of destruction that would give them a false illumination, that would make them radiant to this world, that would make the world love them. Because the world has been taught to believe the lie. There is a reason that the director of the CIA said that every bit of their plan would be accomplished when everything the American population believes is a lie. Does it sound like maybe that might be more true than we are willing to admit? If in every area that we start to examine and question, when we peel back the tendrils that were hiding it through propaganda, through scientism, through these doctrines of science falsely so-called, if when we examine the fruit of their labors, we find that they are liars, by what fruit, by what tree do we think that fruit came from? Did that come from the tree of life or the tree of knowledge of good and evil? Because the more I examine the way that this world has been built, the things that we were taught as children, the more I see that it is absolutely lies. And that is intentional, because people who came before us, our ancestors, spoke oaths of destruction, spoke oaths of blinding, oaths of wasting disease, so that you would never have the opportunity to come to the fullness of truth. And they instead could profit off of the inheritance and the giftings that you would one day come to have as your own. It said God would allow people, when they would walk in their iniquity, to be cursed to 3 and 4 generations. And the enemy instead takes that and builds rituals and covenants off of it. And so you can garner the power of 3 to 4 generations. You can suck the souls off of those 3 and 4 generations. And then you can feed off of the generational destruction that comes into the lives of those people. That is exactly what you do when you make a covenant with the devil, so that you can have power. I made a covenant with the devil when I was 6 years old so that I too could have power, because I was tired of watching people I love be tormented and abused and manipulated and coerced into doing things that they never wanted to do. I was tired of watching people get more powerful because they exploited and abused children. I was raging against that system, and I had no one to fight that battle with me at that time. And so instead, I turned not to the believers that were around me, not to my pastor, not to my teacher, not to the good Christian friends and community that I went to every Sunday. I was at every church service every single week, every year of my life for more than 25 years, because I absolutely believed that was still true and was good. But at the end of the day, I never went to the Christian church for power. I never went to the Christian church to find bold people. I never went there to find soldiers who would link arms with me and fight for me and fight with me. I never went there because I never saw warriors in that church. I never saw people that were actually standing in the difference, standing in that gap and saying, come out of her. Be not a partaker of her sins. Deliver yourself while there is still time from the flesh that is consuming you. I saw lots of different gospel messages. I saw lots of little 30-second prayers of inviting Jesus into my heart so he could be my Lord and Savior. I saw lots of things that were never talked about in the Word of God, but were supposed to be the vaccine that would inoculate me into a way of being that would set me free one day from the bondage that I suffered my whole life. I saw a orchestrated, engineered vaccine that was given to me in the form of religious indoctrination that would show me instead not the power of the living God, that would expose me to a little bit of his truth, all the while it would cause the very diseases that the enemy would profit off of from me the rest of my life and the lives of the people I love the most. That was designed by the dragon. These vaccines that they're injecting into our children are not coming from a penetration of a needle, from some false rape that they do to our children that's government mandated. I am talking about the inception of a doctrine that is so destructive because it's beautiful and it has some aspects of the truth in it. That is what the liar and the thief and the lion who seeks to devour the children around us is seeking to do every day of our lives. He is seeking to infect us with parasitic truth that is just enough truth for us to totally understand it and just enough lie for us to also think it sounds better than anything we've ever heard. These new revelations, these new wineskins, these outpourings of a false manifestations, these new age ideologies that have infected us very strategically back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s and now are birthing generations of people that are sucking graves and are desperate to find power from something other than the church that has been giving it to them from the teat of deception. My family member showed me what covenant was. I got power from the enemy for my oaths that I swore to him, but I had to keep filling that empty well over and over and over again, because the truth is the power that you tap into in the kingdom of darkness is a broken well. It has to be recharged. Their batteries are never full because the power that they denied themselves when they cut themselves off, when they transformed themselves into his image, then they made themselves to look like the God of this world. And when all of the mankind followed after his lying, beautiful deceit, we cut ourselves off from the power of the living God. And instead, we have to go and recharge our flesh. We have to refill. We have to go drink from those same cisterns. We have to still have those same problems and be burdened by the same things that have carried us for years and years and years until we realize those things that we thought were carrying us through, these coping mechanisms that helped us get through the day, get through the night, to avoid the dreams, to avoid the failures, to avoid the apathy. Those things were the burdens that were crushing us and keeping us from ever knowing him, from ever looking up and seeing that he is not far off, that he is near unto those who call on them, and he will deliver us from the snares of death if only we would be quick to call to him, that we would be slow to speak, quick to listen, slow to anger, giving not an iota of ground for sexual impropriety, that we would not be gossipers and slanderers and rumor sowing, spreading seed of evil people. Let us not sow the seeds of wickedness. Let us not sow the seeds of dissension, but rather let us sow seeds of righteousness, of mercy, of forgiveness, of compassion, of long suffering. Because that is the covenant of the living God that is supposed to be reflected in our lives. I saw these different people that were out there in the world when I began to get into my mid-20s. I saw these crazy people that were so willing to stand for what they believe in, that this world mocked them, that this world despised them, that this world hated them, that it made up theories for how we could dismiss what it is they have to say, that it desperately did everything it could to launch disinformation campaigns to discredit the people who would bring the truth. See, I grew up in a world where we discredited people that brought the truth, where we cut the tongues out of people that spoke the truth. And we didn't do that all the time by using a knife and a dagger or a chisel. But a lot of times we just did that by making sure that the people that were in their support system poisoned their well. See, the most destructive thing you can do to a person's life is to not attack them directly, like any of the good Jesuits out there like to do, like any of the good Christians that have been indoctrinated by Jesuits will now teach you. They themselves will infect us with the very doctrines of our own defeat, because they will not tell us the truth. They will lie to us and tell us to not read the whole book, to not believe it literally, to not follow after the ways of the world, but instead to think that we ourselves are set apart on a better path. And because of that, we have the right hand of good works that will fuel our kingdoms, that will give us truth when we need it. At the end of the day, we ourselves become just as susceptible to the influences of the enemy when we swallow those doctrines down, when we walk in the impotency that comes from those ideas. I am calling people back to a simpler way of living, a simpler life, where you dedicate yourself to knowing the God of resurrection, the one who truly defeated death, not the false beast that will one day rise out of his pit with his minions and hordes who will fight against the living God and the rider on the white horse. They will be consumed and destroyed. That is certain. So let us all be very, very careful to understand whose army we're really fighting in, and whether or not we ourselves have become agents of evil in our ignorance, in our haughtiness, in our pride, in our desperation to be heard, in our desperation to be seen and vindicated and validated. Let us instead be a people that are known by our convictions for the good things in this world, who do not shy away from evil, who do not turn it off because they hate hearing about the dirty, gritty details of what's going on behind the scenes. But instead, these are people that face down the darkness and say, here is the truth. Regardless of what you believe, I love you enough to tell it to you. See, I saw those strange people. I saw those peculiar people at different moments of my life. I saw that there was more power in the kingdom of heaven than I'd ever seen in the kingdom of darkness, but I only saw it in glimpses. I saw echoes of it. I saw it in a 13-year-old girl named Suze, who sat on a school bus with me and who prayed for me, who did not fear the demonic strongholds that were waging war against me, who wasn't afraid of the abuse that I was suffering and the incest that was raging in my family, because my family members thought it was more valuable to sell their children's innocence than it was to guard it. And just because my family members got filthy rich and were able to buy planes and multiple houses and send their children to the best private schools and live a life of luxury and comfort, they paid every day for it with the destruction of their own children. So be careful when you yourself are willing to sell your child away for a break, so you can have some time off during the school day, so that you can have some time off when you're bored and sick of dealing with their nonsense over and over again. We are supposed to be the ones that protect our children, not send them off to somebody else so that they can be abused. Because time after time after time, I watched family members and friends who listened to the good Christians next door and suggested they go to a nice little godly Christian camp in the woods where Uncle Jerry had plenty of fun playing with those little children. See, predators hide in the good-looking sheep. They hide amongst people that are inherently blinded to the reality that there's very evil people in the world. These blinded sheep who have been blinded by the very pastors that are supposed to be there to protect him, by the very people that are supposed to protect the children instead, are allowing the wolves to come into the flock and to bed down with the sheep and raise wolves that come in generation after generation after generation and sow in the discord that plagues the body today. Why is it that there's suddenly people that have millions of views and are being heralded on the stage with Oprah Winfrey, and their music is shining a new light into all of the world, but because they were chosen, raised, and cultivated to be that? But the reason people are trapped in that, the reason the world and all of those players that are on the stage that we look at thinking that they're the person in power, that they're the real dark hand behind the scenes, those people are puppets. They are pawns, they are slaves, and they are looking at each and every one of you, watching to see what it is you are going to do with the truth you've come to know. People are watching very carefully what you do with the truths you've been entrusted, even if they're lying even if they're mocking, even if they're betraying you, even if they're condemning you, even if they're saying nasty things about you behind their back, they're still watching. They're always watching. So what is it that you are going to be found guilty of? I would like us to be condemned by this world for the sake of the truths that we believed, than to ever be condemned by this world for our apathy and our indifference, that we are the generation that sat idly by while the rise of the occultism took place, while the rise of the magical kingdom, the re-enchantment, that the age of enchantment would return unto men, and they would instead go and worship these gods who will one day walk among us again. I have seen these dragons of old, and you too, and our generations that are coming after us, our children and our children's children, are going to see these mortals walking amongst us suddenly have immortals in their midst. It says in Psalm 82 that though these were as gods, they shall die as men. The dragon is going to be cast down, and him and his transforming figures and ministers of righteousness are going to be cast down onto this earth, and they will walk amongst us again. And if they aren't already here in our midst, let me tell you right now, they are coming. And they are furious, for their time is short. If the enemy knows his time is short, then so too is ours. And we must fight with more furious, passionate conviction, that we must fight and fuel our furnaces with a different fire that comes from the all-consuming fire of the Most High, that is unquenchable, that is unstoppable, that never needs to be replenished, that never needs to be recharged, that we would call on him and see the fires of the living God come and consume the selfishness, the pride, the arrogance, the haughtiness, and the dragons that have nested within before we ever turn to look to wage war without. Be very clear on this one point. The greatest danger is never going to be the stranger walking into your camp. It will always be, and will only ever be, the one who's staring at us in the mirror. Because the dragon has incepted and sown himself into our lives. It has seeded itself into our genetics. It has sown itself into our food, into our clothing, into our music, into the air we breathe, into the lights in the sky, into the lies that we believe to be truths that are propagated every day and broadcast over us with this Hollywood wand through entertainment, media, and all of the different little tendrils of the spidery web that they have woven to ensnare us. But be very, very cautious that you do not fall into the snare of the enemy's making, but instead take up the sword of the Spirit and sever all those ungodly soul ties with any of these entities you ever bound yourself to, or any of your ancestors ever did. Whether you know it or not, there is only power in praying for repenting and renouncing the sins of your ancestors, to ask the Father to forgive the sins of any Freemasons in your past, that you categorically and unequivocally reject and renounce every oath that was ever spoken by you or any of your ancestors before you, that you plead the blood of the Lamb over every word, deed, and action that has ever been spoken against you or your children or any of your future children's children. It is time that we be people that are bound to the prayer that wages war, strategic, powerful war against the ways of this world. That instead we be people that are found faithful. We be found lovely, patient, compassionate, gentle, long-suffering, not keeping a record of wrongs, but instead forgiving as many times as we've been forgiven. If any of us are wandering, if any of us are moving off of the path of truth and of obedience to the word, if any of us are getting ensnared of any of the doctrines that the devil is trying to put into our lives, let us be loving enough to be patient with people when they are lost in that deception. And let us lovingly seek to only privately and biblically come to bring them into correction, lest the log that is sticking out of our face smack the people that we love and destroy the people we love, as we promise that we're only here to take the splinter from their eye. Be very, very careful then of how you represent the name of the Most High God, because of any commandment any of us is most dangerous and most likely to commit, it is taking the name of the Lord our God and defaming it to the world and attributing it to the things that the Most High God has never had anything to do with. So don't you defame his name. Don't you shame the character of Christ. Don't you defile the way of what it is that he came here to do. But instead, let us show the world that narrow way is one that is paved with love, that is paved with patience, that is paved with humility and long suffering. Because at the end of the day, if you do not love your enemies, the love of the Father is not in you. If this world is loving you like it loves the rest of us, that it likes the way it loves everybody else, if the world is comfortable with the message that you have to bring, it's because you're bringing a message that is of its own lips, and it loves to lift up those that speak of its world. Be set apart to a different will. Be bound to a very different oath, an oath that is called covenant. Be bound to one covenant with one God. Be wholly dedicated to the convictions of who he is and the life that he called us to live. Be a set-apart people. Be strange. Be peculiar. Be weird. Because by doing so, the people that are still on the other side of the enemy lines, those agent provocateurs, those sons of the dragon who are hiding in your midst, those scales will be cut off of their eyes. And like lightning flashing from the east to the west, the truth of his wisdom, the Most High God's, will be cast down upon them and strike down those vain imaginations and lift up for them an understanding that once and for all offers each of them hope and deliverance. My family pledged my life to a dragon that sits and is marked at the City of London gates in Lake Havasu City, Arizona. The Lord Mayor of London, the designer of Disneyland parks and all the other fantasy islands all over the world, stood and built a city where this war could be waged from, where they could cultivate and create slaves that would willfully go out and infiltrate their agents of evil, that would target their best enemies and sow themselves into their communities, that would then, at the time of their choosing, instill serpentine doctrines that would then give birth to a whole new ideology, a veritable phoenix that would rise from the ashes, that would look like the image of these fallen seraphim once and for all, because those gods are trying to resurrect their mortal bodies, their immortal bodies on this earth. And they're doing that by infecting us through these screens and through these telecommunications devices. And they're trying to bring about the ascension of their beast and his image. So what image will you allow yourself to be raised in? What image will you raise your children in? You must guard their little ears. You must guard their eyes. Because the images that are coming through their screens now are only going to be more insidious. They will be filled with a masking of spiritual power that is designed and dedicated to leading us astray. So be careful how you guard your children. Do whatever it takes to make sure that they are safe and set apart from the way of this world. I hope each and every one of you will take seriously the words that I've spoken here. It is not the message that I think a lot of you hoped I would speak. I know that there's people that are sitting here right now that are furious that these words are being spoken. But mind yourselves, because with every weight and measure that we speak these words from any of these positions of power or prestige that we think we have, every word we ever speak is going to be accounted to us. And so the words I must speak and the convictions of my heart do not align with the ways of this world any longer, because I renounce the ways of that world. I betrayed the kingdom of the fallen son. I renounced the former father that I once called my own. And instead I came out of that unholy covenant. I came out of that and no longer marked myself as an agent of evil, but instead I sought to be a son of righteousness. And I am here to try to sow seeds of hope into the hearts of the hurting, that you yourself can be set free no matter what you've been a part of, no matter what you've been made to do, and no matter what was done unto you. The Most High God can redeem it. The Most High God can deliver you from it. But you must come out and you must expose what you did. You must expose what people around you did. And you do so boldly and courageously, but very strategically. So be mindful of the evidence that you can glean off of those that are around you in those positions that you might be placed in. Be careful when you do these things. Do so under the direct obedience to the Most High God and not to the people that would try to keep you ensnared into this way. I'm not talking about bloodline assassin families. I'm talking about your mom and dad and your sisters and brothers and your aunts and uncles and your friends at work and the community that all wants to hold you in, to hold on to you, that you wouldn't leave the herd. But let me tell you right now, those sheep are being fattened for an offering to the beast. Let us instead become servants to the good shepherd who can draw us away, that we might follow his voice and his voice alone, that you can dedicate yourself unto him, and he would protect you from the serpent in your midst, and that he would redeem you. No matter if you were the wolf that was born to consume his own children, he will love you, he will cherish you, he will redeem you, and he will give you a new life if you call on him. But you have to forsake the ways of the left-hand path. You have to curse out of your life the death that once ensnared you, and instead agree that the Messiah, Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, he has taken death and defeated him. He went down into Tartarus, not as a victim, but as a victor. And he heralded over all of those who were held in chains of darkness, "Victory is mine." He took captivity captive. He took the keys from death himself. Jesus was not tortured when he went down into Sheol. He did not suffer when he was down there. His suffering was through. He'd earned it by the stripes of his body and by the blood that fell from his side. Blood and water fell on this earth and cleansed it once and for all. The earth cries out and agrees. The enemy cries out and agrees. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord most God. To him is the glory. To him is the praise. And he took from those wicked ones the keys of death, from Gadriel, that serpent in the garden that deceived the woman and conceived in her death, that was supposed to reign over the hearts of man, that would rule over us for then until the end of the age. But death, his age, is coming to an end. The age of death will have its final victory, because at the end, he himself will be defeated. He himself will be thrown into a lake of fire. He will be consumed, and all those who pledge themselves to him will be consumed likewise. So come out of the ways of death and learn instead the power of resurrection lies with the King of glory, the Son of David, the Most High God, who stands in righteous victory day and night, proclaiming freedom to the captives, liberty to those who are in chains, and the opening of ears to all who are deaf, and the sight shall be returned to the blind. So I pray you'd come out of the deception that it has ensnared you. I pray you'd be courageous for your faith. I pray you would look upon the people that are standing around you and know that they themselves need to see someone of conviction. Be bold for what you believe. Do not stand idly by while the war is waged all around you. Go instead and take back the very gates of hell and go expose the wicked workers wherever they may be, whether they're in your community, in their idols and pillars that are built up all around you. Study their signs and symbols and learn the agents and how they communicate to each other. God spoke in the word. God gave his word. The enemy gives signs and symbols, but God speaks the word that would destroy those works. So I pray every one of you would stand ready with your belt of truth girded on your loins, your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of shalom, and that breastplate of righteousness with the helmet of salvation covering you. You take up your shield of faith and your sword of the Spirit, and you wage war on the darkness, and you fight for the souls of the people that are around you, whether they're your mortal enemies or whether you're your best friend. I'm Nathan Reynolds, and I am so thankful that I've been given a chance to stand here on this stage and speak to you and to share my testimony with any of you. I thank you for being willing to listen to the stories of survivors, because they are brutal. But if you would stand with us, you can set the captives free and give us new hope. Thank you to each of you who is here today. Good night.